Okay, so on the show today, Pedro Paz. So I've been wanting to sort of bring some exposure to some people in the kind of Portuguese embodiment scene. And Pedro definitely was one that I wanted to talk to. Because I like him. I like him a lot. Met him personally. I've danced with him. I've hung out with him a bit. And also, he's one of the bigger names in the kind of Portuguese scene, I'd say. A dancer, a dance teacher, been involved with lots of projects there for many, many years. And it looks like you're in the woods today, Pedro. So welcome.
Oh, thank you, Mark. First, thank you for inviting me to this, which I find really interesting, especially to give this interview on the woods in the middle of the Atlantic. So I'm in Azores Islands, and this is how it looks most everywhere. So I found out if I could have a good network here, and in fact I do. So I say, let's take the chance of giving this chat call here on the middle of the woods.
You know, you're actually one of the few guests who's joined us from, from nature. And that's kind of surprising when you think of the embodiment world. I guess most people just don't trust their Wi-Fi. But yeah, there's one thing I like about Portugal. I know you're in the Azores, which is only technically part of Portugal, is that sort of slightly more kind of outdoorsy life. I think it goes naturally with movement and embodiment.
It does, of course, because moving is nature. So it makes all the sense when you're talking about dance and movement to connect with nature. Not only because I really believe in bridges between urbanity and the nature, because we are humans, we need to be in urban contexts to keep alive somehow, as we are a lot. Nature wouldn't stand us all at the same time. There we would, just fuck it all. If we would be all, nature wouldn't understand the purpose of us being all together there. So we need to create these settlements, which we call cities. And I think it's really important to deal with them and to create a good city environments to live, inspired in nature. But nature, I believe, more and more is a place for us to visit and to feel peaceful, and to some of us engage more in the rural life. But yeah, I'm a city man, in fact.
And let's hear a bit about your life, because did I just learn that you grew up in China?
I did, in South China, since I was a kid.
What's the story? Tell us, because you don't look Chinese. I'm guessing you're not from there. So take that. We'll get in trouble. So yeah, tell us about your life, like China and then Portugal, and how did you get started in dance? Tell us a bit about your story.
About my story. It's when I went to China, I was a child. I was really small, so I had the part of my father's family there, and then I moved with my parents, and it was, for me, the most beautiful thing is the contact of the Chinese culture and the Oriental culture. In a time that there was no network, there was not this spreading of information around. And suddenly there I was, without knowing how and why, in my classroom full of Chinese kids. And yeah, it was a big change for me there. And soon I was seeing myself playing in Buddhist monasteries and temples, and having this interaction with Chinese, which is totally different. I think the way we meet Chinese nowadays it's not the same. We have an idea of Chinese community different than the real Chinese there. And I'm really grateful to have this connection with the Chinese people. I had a brother that was really linked. He would speak Chinese, and he was presenting us, and he was bringing me everywhere to his Chinese friends. They were speaking Chinese. I wouldn't understand anything. But I remember to have a lot of fun, and they had all this smile and this very generous and kind way of living that inspired me a lot. Yeah, China was really a big thing for me. And then I came back start studying dance there, and that's especially I start dancing by my own as a kind of lonely child, because when you grew up and you realize you're not the same sort of child that you meet, like having all this bunch of friends and going around. So I was this sort of solitary child. So diving into my own music, I was playing piano, doing ballet since kid, and having this very different sort of education. So was interesting to meet that in China. And yeah, as a kid, so I could grow up with my parents' Portuguese culture and the Chinese culture there. So it made me a bridge inside. So between my Christian Occidental references of my parents and then there with the Buddhist Taoist realm. Like going to school, I remember this for me is a very, very beautiful image of since kid going to school and being in the bus stop beside the garden and seeing all these old people doing Qigong and Tai Chi, for example. And super inspiring all the time for me. I was very connected with Qigong and Tai Chi, the Chinese medicine and the Chinese pharmacies and herbs and all this. Another idiosyncrasy of, yeah. And it made, and when I came back to Portugal, when I was 16 to continue my studies in the conservatory, I found out I was a bit of a freak, you know, because I was speaking Portuguese. I was a Portuguese guy, but I was different. And I didn't realize why I was that different until 20 years after I returned to China. And then I realized, oh, I'm from here. Now I understand I'm from here. And although I'm Portuguese, but this is my roots, it's my background, yeah. And that's a bit of my origins there.
How old were you when you came back to Portugal?
I was 16. I was living alone with 16. So it was also a big challenge. So I was in a conservatory, which was kind of a monastery in the, you know, growing up in a conservatory, like from 8 in the morning to 8 at night, 12 hours a day, including Saturdays. You really live like monk style, no, not too much time to hang out or to. It was really dance.
So it's a dance school, right? For those that it might sound strange, but some of our listeners don't know the dance world. So conservatory is a sort of traditional Western dance school, right?
Yeah, it's an amazing school, our school here. But in fact, I just heard a few years ago that with my generation, they were testing the limits, the physical limits that they could go with the dance students. So they just fucked up all my body. And this was one of the reasons that because my back couldn't stand anymore, all the dance and the ballet and the big jumps and the pirouettes and all this stuff. And so I dedicated myself to Qigong to heal my body. And this was a big change. So when I was around my 20, very early, and thankfully I start early, I start having a totally different approach very soon to the somatic approach of movement. And because I was already dancing, since I never stopped dancing, I start merging the Qigong, Tai Chi in my dance without realizing how new that could be, especially here in Portugal. And there was nothing about it. And when people knew that I was dancing with this Tai Chi quality, people were looking me to the side like, what the hell are you doing? What is these soft movements you are doing now, you know, especially in a time that people were very rough and it was a lot about stamina and power and strength and jump. And a lot of my classmates, their bodies are they look like 60, you know, in their knees are fully broken, their backs are broken. And I'm kind of lucky to reach out 44 and being healthy in my body.
No, you're definitely in good shape. I've danced with you and you're certainly healthy. So you're one of the first people to do kind of, I guess we could call it free dance, conscious dance, postmodern dance. Like my understanding is you're really one of the pioneers of that in Portugal, right?
I was in Portugal because it wasn't too open already abroad, and dance was already very developed towards this somatic approach, but in Portugal it wasn't. But I was not aware of that at all, really. I was just doing my thing. This is one of my characteristics. I'm not this guy that is trying to see what are others doing to get inspired. I always found kind of a place inside or with my own life in my solitude to find my artistic resources in my research. And I was always very curious to find it inside me. And I believe this is what made something people found special maybe about my work. It was because of that. So with the Qigong, for example, when I start opening classes for outside, and really because I needed the money, because in Portugal it was not easy to make your life just with the dance company. I was independent with my own dance company, which I was directing. And we had a lot of money from the government in this, but there was a period that we didn't. And then we decided, guys, we need to give classes. So our company opened classes and people were joining. And it was the first time I could see people were dancing barefoot and having another sort of music environment and proposals to go inside the body to meet their joints. And people weren't used to understand that they had a subtleness in their movement. They had an immense possibility of motion that if they would zoom in, they would open up a big picture about themselves and dance and the others. So this was something like that. And in fact, the Qigong, we did a proprioception, this refined proprioception that Qigong gives you. It expands a lot your perspective of dance. And yeah, that was my main research. And also, it's a big world, the Qigong, and people normally they have this idea of a lot of protocols and formulas of Tai Chi and Qigong, but soon I was very lucky to meet in China amazing masters that they were having these hundreds of students practicing these sword formulas or the fan formulas, and all very beautiful choreographed. And I have an episode that I like sometimes to talk about because it was quite funny. I was dancing in a garden there, my childhood garden that I was invited to choreograph there. Lowly Myok was called the garden, and I was with my dancers and choreographing and rehearsing them. And then the production manager from our performance, he came to me and said, Pedro, there's the Shifu, like the master, the Tai Chi master wants to speak with you. And I said, let's do it. So they brought me to him, and I just remember him with this backlight, very cinematographic thing with his students. I approached him, and he just told me, nice to meet you. I enjoyed your Tai Chi very much. And I said, thank you. But I wasn't practicing Tai Chi. And he said, yes, you were. And I insisted again, I was dancing. I was not practicing Tai Chi. Yes, you were. And I said, okay, if you insist I was practicing Tai Chi, thank you. And then he told me, show me your Tai Chi. This is something very characteristic in the Tai Chi world. Like when they ask you, show me your Tai Chi, because everyone has their own Tai Chi. And this is something that people, it's interesting to understand. So everyone has their own method there. Everyone has their own research. And then show me your Tai Chi. I close my eyes and I tune into the best formulas I studied when I was young about it. So I was starting doing something really I thought was beautiful and precise and this and that with my eyes closed. And I just heard like, and I opened my eyes and he told me, I thought you were going to show me something better than that. So what do you mean? And he told me, I'm going to show you some true Tai Chi. You have to come with me because I cannot do this beside my students because they'll tell me I'm crazy. And then nobody wants to come anymore to my classes. I didn't get it the first time what he meant with that. So he brought me somewhere hidden in the garden. And that guy started tuning into himself, and his body was shaking and moving, and start to having like the image I have was like flames and thunders coming out of his body. Such an embodied things, it's beyond words. I cannot really explain. And myself perceiving that, I felt almost embarrassed because I was not used to that powerful energy that was coming out of the body of that man. And it was incredible, like something you wouldn't see on the movies or something like that. And he told me, this is Qigong, this is Tai Chi. And I was, and for me, it was totally mind-blowing. And he told me, the true Qigong is improvised. The true Tai Chi is improvised. You tune into yourself, deep into your core, and it will flow through you. And you just need to learn that and to believe that. But because in China, it was not allowed to people to be emancipated, the only way that Qigong and Tai Chi teachers were able to pass some of the information, the precious information, was through the formulas, choreographed energetical gymnastic. They will call it energetical gymnastic, but they couldn't say they were doing Tai Chi or moving energy. It was something soft that was good for the joints and people to keep their bodies healthy and their mind healthy, but nothing about emancipating themselves through movement. So this was really a core moment in my life when I understood that. So, that's why the spontaneous Qigong is forbidden in China. And if you say you practice spontaneous Qigong, you're not going to be well seen. You're going to be kind of, he's a freak. So because I'm Western and I live in the Western, I wasn't afraid of that. I don't live in China anymore. So I start researching inside myself what was all this about improvising, without even knowing so much about the improvisation of dance and contact improvisation, which I was practicing with my colleagues based on this Qigong Tai Chi principle. And I'm grateful for that. I'm really grateful for the best part of my work to have been sort of a self-research between me and my colleagues, not going to a lot of workshops or meeting masters to teach me. It was really inside, and I really believe that it's go deep, go inside yourself, trust, take time with yourself, and you probably find something. It's an act of faith, when you start researching. But in my case, it was successful because people started attending to my sessions in my classes, and they found something there that was good for them, and it still is.
Mm-hmm.
That's
fresh. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you really developed the kind of dance scene in Portugal, right? Like these dance labs that you do. I couldn't get to one. I was trying to. Is it Arrábida? Where are they at? Remind me to say that.
Arrábida.
How do I say it?
Because we say Arrábida.
Arrábida.
Arrábida is a mountain in South Lisbon, which historically it comes from the Arab al-Ribat. That means a place of contemplation, or a place of also they had this double meaning of, because it was high mountain, so they could see the boats and the pirates coming, so it could be the place of watching, but also spiritual wise it was kind of the place of inner perception, kind of something like that. So Arrábida or Al-Ribat was, since I was a child, my family was going there to the beaches. There's amazing, one of the most beautiful beaches in the European coast. And I grew up there even when I came in holidays, living in China, every year I was coming in the summer to Portugal. That was a very special place for me. And suddenly there I am. We are doing the 21st edition. I basically started with my husband there. He's somewhere hiding there. He doesn't want to appear, but he's giving me the internet, the internet source.
I've met him. He's a beautiful man.
And a great cook. No, he was there, and I remember you telling that it was one of the best catering services you got in the gathering. No, you were not in Arrábida, but you were with me and Tom. And by the way, it was really amazing to see you and to meet you dance there. Because sometimes I remember the first time I met you, I was like, how is this guy moving, And in fact, you move, man. You move, you groove. You not only move, you groove. And your body just takes the shapes you want, and it's amazing. Yeah.
Thanks, man. Sometimes people know me as... Sorry, there's a lag on the line. Sometimes people know me as like conference organizer or like business guy or whatever. And I'm like, no, primarily I'm an embodiment guy. I'm a mover. And sometimes people are surprised when they find that out, like, no, this is what I love to do. Like I was really run down the last time I saw you, and I was like, what do I want to do to kind of nurture myself and heal myself? I was just on the back of a trip to Ukraine, and I was like dancing the woods with Pedro and Tom and like the others. Like that just seems like for me, that's my nourishing space as well. So it was a really beautiful event, that one, actually. So I'll be back in that location actually next week, teaching my own workshop for coaches. So
it's a beautiful place.
A really beautiful space. Yeah, yeah, that's the Quinta Tenchi Center. We had Rita on the podcast actually. She's
Yeah.
who runs it. Yeah, she's been on the podcast. Nice. But I mean, Arrábida, is that actually a community or is it a venue? Like people have been telling me, oh, I should visit, I should go there. Like for various reasons, I haven't got around to it yet. But is it kind of an ongoing place or is it just an event that's once a year? Like what is it?
So Arrábida itself is a natural park. And there's a lot of little communities. This is another issue I would love to talk about, because people are a lot of times think about community like people living together all the time with each others and building up this community. I've done that for years, and now I really believe that the most healthy thing is a good neighborhood. So Arrábida there's a lot of spots where people are settling, and then they create a community, which they are independent and doing their own stuff. And in fact, one of these settlements, it's a place called Ser Vivo, which since its beginning, I'm connected with. Yeah, it's friends of mine that opened that space. I met these guys. It's a couple with kids around 25 years ago, and they were doing their clown, and they work with children in the hospitals with children with cancer. So all their work was basically about that, working with children. They do beautiful work. And when I dropped in, they were not used to work with adults, and I was not used to work with children. That's a fact. So I really understood that my path is with adults. And as a big friend of mine told me once, like, it is never too late to have a happy childhood. So as an adult, we can really work that on, like recovering and retuning with this childhood, this playground that dance can offer us. So I made my first retreat there. They didn't have any sort of conditions there. It was like a cement floor, and the space was big enough. And I told them, okay, I need to build up a dance floor here, guys, to do. And they told me, is it really necessary? And I said, yes, a dance floor with airbox, so we can jump there, wood, and yeah. And I did it. I wasted all my financial resource building that, so it was really an investment in the beginning. And it started like that. This was in 2016, and I never stopped. It became my second home, where I kept developing my retreats and little gatherings. And until nowadays, the space evolved, and everyone that is now leaving came because of my retreats, and they acknowledge that, and they tell me that. So all these people that are leaving now here, every gathering we do, someone stays. And then and now they have a beautiful core group that is a sort of familiar environment, and they're doing it really well. So Ser Vivo is a small place. It's a very humble place. It's not a fancy retreat place. But there are other fancy retreat places, and a lot of people and organizers tell me, Pedro, why you keep in Ser Vivo? It's such a poor place to do the quality of your work. And I feel it's a kind of fidelity, I would say that. It's my place, you know. It's not that big or fancy, or because there is really other places amazing that have another resources, but it's like it's my place, and I really enjoy doing that. And there's a memory there already with our work. You know, we go in our 20th edition. So that's a bit of
I'm interested in this idea of community and neighborhoods. You know, I think I'm with you on this. I've been to places that they're like live-in communities where, you know, like Findhorn, for example, in Scotland, you know, wonderful places, but they're very intense, and there has to be a lot of discussion and a lot of kind of local politics, and, you know, and then there's other places that are just cool towns, or even I'd say, you know, Portugal kind of becoming like cool country places that it could be a city, it could be a region, it could even be a nation that just kind of attracts people who have a certain vibe or interested in a certain thing. And, you know, I know this in the, I don't know, the Colares area, you know, around Sintra. There's just a lot of cool people doing interesting things, you know? And I'm wondering if this is kind of a model for the future, particularly as people like to be mobile. Like, I didn't know you'd be in the Azores today. You know, like, you've talked to me in different places over the years. I'm like, I've just got back from here. I've just spent winter there. And not everyone's a digital nomad, and some people have kids and they need to be in one place for a while or 10 years or something. But there seems more possibility to move around. And this kind of attraction of going where your values are rather than necessarily the country or place you happen to grow up in. So yeah, any thoughts on this sort of slightly nomadic living and the idea of sort of extended community?
A lot. Actually, most of my thoughts were always around that theme. Since 2010, I had a breakdown, really a burnout, I would say, and I just left everything back and put my bag on my back, and just left with no money and nothing. It was one of the strongest experiences of my life. And there I had the opportunity throughout my journey to meet a lot of what they call these communities, you know. And but now just coming to a synthesis, not to talk about that, because it's just a lot of different experiences. One of the important things for me was there was a lot of conflicts, you know, and difficult things to deal with. And I was always bringing dance, and people were always saying, wow, through dance we solve so much conflicts. You know, there's so much shit that we don't need to talk about, because we tap into a place of a mutual understanding, that we really let go a lot of these questions and doubts and political considerations. And this was something very important for me, and it was a gift for me to understand how important dance and art and music were for the cohesion of communities, or little tribes, or little clans, whatever you want to call them. And it happened that I found the perfect community. I thought this was 2016. It was in the north of it was in Galicia. And they are one of the oldest communities in Europe. Their project is amazing. It's about reforesting since the early 80s, and they are there. And I was totally like, finally, I arrived to the place I was dreaming about, and this and that. And when I was there settling, I got a phone call from my family saying that my mother had a stroke. So I was the only one close to her, as all my brothers were out. So I simply had to take all my stuff and come back to Portugal. And my mom, she lives in one of the most problematic neighborhoods in Lisbon, from with African and Gypsy people. So it's really a very dense place. And there I was suddenly, after being in this paradise, in this neighborhood, in my childhood, my early childhood bedroom, full of memories and boxes of stuff, you know. And with my mom totally paralyzed with the 80 years, and I needed to clean her, to change her clothes, giving her bath, all this. And suddenly I realized that life, for somehow, it was bringing me this chance for me to understand something, you know. And I understood I was running away I was running a lot away. It took me time to understand this. And suddenly what I realized is that in this crazy neighborhood, I met the most generous people, the most loyal people, warm-hearted, truthful. And it was an incredible, it was totally mind-blowing. After all these years in art and this new age thing and going around, and suddenly I was in Lisbon, meeting, totally, it was not a new reality. It was just confronting myself to something that it was always there. And that I was, meeting back my family, and it was an amazing step.
The alchemist story, isn't it? You know, it's under our nose the whole time. We go to these exotic communities in Bali or Thailand, and people go around the world. And, you know, sometimes it's just right there.
It's right there, but it's fine. It's fine, Mark. You know, more and more, you know, there's no right or wrong. You know, if you choose to go to Bali, go to Bali. If you choose to live in New York, live in New York. If you choose to be a poor monk barefoot, be a poor monk barefoot. If you want to be rich, be rich. You know, if you want to be a bitch, be a bitch. If you want to be a saint, be a whatever. You know, and there's a time, you know, for us to experience all this diversity. And I think one of the good things in me, I was never scared, kind of to move around all my diversity. And since I came back to the city, and I needed to make money here, you know. So because living in the city is not the same like living in a community where you grow your stuff and you don't need money. You need, but there's another flow of resources and things. And in Lisbon, I start teaching again in Lisbon since that time. Then I start doing the retreats. And thankfully, all my great income starts coming from there. And I say I was very lucky. I exclusively dedicate my life for dance, nothing else, and I can live properly with that. And then I realized, oh my God! So I step out of these new age communities to meet people here and work with them with the urban reality. And the first thing I start seeing was like I had like old people coming to my classes and young people, like 18, 20-year-old dancers, for example. And I remember a woman that she's still my friend nowadays. She was 72 by that time. And after a couple of months, she offered me a book. She wrote handwrite with some pictures that she took in a retreat. I did my first retreat, I think. And then at the end, she said, "Thank you for helping me to awake again and to get out of a depression I didn't even realize I was." And she was not the first person telling me that. A lot of people were telling me that dance is taking me out of this gray zone, of this depression, of this sadness, of this anger, of whatever. And so more and more I start believing, okay, I'm in the right path. So I'm living here close by to the city, even in Arrábida. I try to live in a countryside with Hugo. But as close as I can to the cities, because it's where is the concentrated mass of my of the public that can really enjoy of my work. So I don't feel like now to work with barefoot hippies only, you know, that they come and enjoy a lot, you know, the dance and ecstatic dances, and this doesn't interest me anymore that much. Although I can have a lot of fun sometimes. But I really want to work with people that sometimes are scared to step into the studio, and you for sure you have the same, but that diversity of people that come to you, and you don't know how, mouth to mouth, because I'm not a great promoter of my work, but I see people that, for example, an astronaut. I had an astronaut coming to my work, doctors, lawyers, architects. People that had the most weird jobs, and then there they are, and they come totally stiff and not knowing where they're going, and at a couple of hours after, they already feel safe. And this is something that is a quality I know of my work, is that people say they feel safe. They feel they're in a trustful environment, and they know they're held. And this is I have no recipe for that. It's my nature, but this is something I know that people talk about. So they come because they know it's trustful somehow. And then they start allowing. And when they find themselves rolling on the ground and laughing again and touching each other, touching themselves, touching other bodies, and feeling this connection, synchronicities, playfulness, joy, a certain type of joy that it's not the one that we used to have only when we drink or when you go out and have some fun with our friends. It's another sort of joy that you meet by setting your body free and playing with others. It's incredible. I'm so happy, honestly, to find this path of embodiment and dance. Really, I'm really a lucky guy.
It's a privilege to be able to do this work, for sure. And I guess the scene has changed quite a lot in Portugal, as one of the sort of OGs, the original gangsters of the Portuguese embodiment world. A lot of teachers have moved there. I've got some friends who are from Russia or different places who have moved there, The retreat of yours I went on was pretty international, I guess like 50% non-Portuguese, maybe.
70.
Obviously, people coming to communities, people just coming to be digital nomads, that's a huge thing. Portugal's kind of cool, which is kind of a weird thing to say about a country. Like one of my friends said, why is everyone moving to Portugal? Like what are your thoughts on this sort of, sometimes I call it a movimento, this kind of like gathering, this kind of movement of different people to Portugal?
Yeah, it's called the Little India, kind of. There was this exodus to India in a certain period in the 60s or 70s. And Portugal it became Bali also, but Portugal is easy as an European country with such a beautiful light and coast. But this is the superficial part. But if I would tell you something that it's maybe, my own belief of, but we have not going too much into spirituality really, but it's a fact that we cannot turn around. There is a tradition in Portugal that actually is very alive here in Açores. It's the tradition of the Holy Spirit. And when you talk about that, it's really beyond religiosity and all this. It's something very powerful, and you can still feel this here. And Portugal has this Holy Spirit tradition. And the Holy Spirit, it's something that it's beyond religion. It's like a life power, the supreme good that you can imagine of bliss, that Portugal, in its prophecy, it said that it will be the land where that will blossom again. When the world will be in a dark age, Portugal would be an epicenter of that. But not Portugal, the frontiers, that the political geographic frontiers of Portugal that we know. It's something that it's called Lusitania. And Lusitania was a nomad people. It's called people of light, the Lusitans. And they were nomadics. So all these lands, they didn't have boundaries or frontiers. They would move around here. And so the Romans, when they conquered this region, they said, these guys don't rule themselves and don't let themselves be ruled. So this is a very classical thing about the Lusitans. They don't rule themselves and they don't allow no one to rule them. They were free people. They were very connected to the lands they were living. They would celebrate a lot of togetherness, circles. Their houses were round shaped. So there's a lot of things like that. And we're talking about 1,000 years. So even when the Christianity is settled here in this region, this Lusitanian background was always here. And when we say, for example, a relation between America and Portugal, we don't say Portuguese-American relation. We say Luso-American relationships. Luso is always the word connected to Portuguese, Luso. And Luso is originally something about light. So these Lusitanian lands were always kind of a place of a lot of hope. And but not only now, since the 19th century, the first naturist communities were already settling here in Alentejo, in Odmira, where, for example, Muji is, where Tamera is, all this region. For a long time is already been kind of a place that was summoning people there. So people were finding a fertile soil for developing kind of humanity, recovering a kind of humanity that was being lost. So Portugal has this mist around it, and people are coming here. We don't need now. I really don't believe we need to think about this, and going to speculate about these spiritual things. I just believe we need to be the way we are, and all these prophecies were just for us to arrive now and be who we are in the moment, truthful and playful and as joyful as we can, even with all this craziness, these adversities. And man, I really believe it. And I know your story, and it really touched me when you were there. This amazing moment, that created the shift in our retreat that you were. I think you remember, with this Russian woman.
First night, yeah, I came and I had like a lot of pain, and I think I told this story once on the podcast that I really had this like hate in my heart towards Russians from obviously hearing a lot of bad stories in Ukraine and being around all the suffering. And it was like a seed in me that was really making me sick, And on the first night of the dance, just got there, hadn't even done the opening circle yet, just dance before you talk, great way to do it. I was dancing with everyone and this one very beautiful girl, and we're just had a great chemistry and we're dancing together. And I'm so pleased to meet her. And I'm like, wow, I'm going to make some great friends here. This is a great place, and just opening up. And then we go around the circle and I'm sitting next to you and it goes around the other way. So the last two people to share are her and me. And she introduces herself and she's Russian. And I had no idea.
I know.
And I just immediately burst into tears because I'd said to myself, look, if there's any Russians there, I'm not going to dance with them. Fine, I'll be civil, but I'm not going to. And then it was I just cracked open, cried in front of this whole group, which is not like me. I'm not like the guy who's crying all the time. But I'm not doing this every 2 minutes, and I just cracked open, and then it sort of, I think, maybe deepened straight away, like this dance thing. And that's the magic of Portugal, the magic of Quintatenchi, the magic of your work and of dance more broadly, that it creates those healings and those moments that are sort of synchronistic like that.
That specific moment, Mark, it just, and this is something else, because sometimes with dance we're searching for the joyful moments, for having fun. And this is something that I realize, especially when you go to contact retreats and to dance retreats or ecstatic, people are aiming to feel that ecstatic feeling of joy, of playfulness. And one thing I've learned, thankfully, I believe maybe it's because of my nature, is that there is no true joy if it's not grounded in your honest sadness and pain. We cannot escape from it, This would give us another podcast about it. But the fact is really to go deep. For your joy to really be deep, it needs to be grounded in the pain. And I would say the pain is not necessarily the pain that we are kind of philosophically used to connect with, but it's something that it's very strong. And you brought that with that honest moment, because we all had our own pains. And that specific moment, you just drop it and you cried and you open up your heart, and she cried. And afterwards, the whole week or the next days, you were always together dancing, and you both had so much fun all the time. You were dancing beautifully. You and Paulina, I have to say her name, because she's a beautiful dancer. You were both dancing amazingly. For me, you both were a reference in that gathering, because you overcame something. You tapped into that pain. You embodied, you were not afraid, you were not escaping of it, and you danced it. And there was a tremendous joy, happiness, and realization grounded in that, and this is something very important.
It was interesting. Yeah. It was for like 2 days, we didn't let each other go. And every time we tried to find a new partner, we were the only people without a partner. And then after that, and we thought, oh, maybe something romantic is going to happen here. And then after 2 days, it was just gone. It was like, it was done. And we're still cool. Like, I texted her the other day and we're friends, but it's like, it was interesting. It was like 2 days and then of joy. And then it was cool. It was just dissipated. It worked through somehow, and I think this is dance. And I think also Portugal does seem to create these magic moments. There's something going on there. I'm not a big mystical guy, but there's something going on there in that place, the Sintra area and Portugal more broadly. And I can see why it attracts people who are drawn to something. I would kind of sort of say to listeners that I don't want to paint Portugal like paradise or something, and
no,
I think it's also really, also it's really important to be respectful to people who are established there, like you, which I've always tried to do. And I love your classes, so that's not hard. And, I think there's a way in which people can come to these magic places and not engage locally, not learn a language, not connect. And I think Portugal is more chance of connecting because it's less foreign in a way, just very practically, I can go to Portugal and I can fly home to see my parents or something, right? And it's a European country, and there's that, there's enough shared culture there. Though I have heard this is happening, say, in Thailand now. My friend who runs a contact retreat in Thailand said there's more Thai people coming to these things now. As kind of Eastern countries get more westernized in a way, though those, more people speak English. But yeah, I think there's some important points there, that not to paint any place as this Shangri-La across the sea where everything will be fine, because, you know, I've spent enough time in Portugal now that I've kind of seen the other side of it too, and things that aren't great, and there's problems, and you know, realize like, oh, I've got to tread a bit respectfully here and not just barge into things sometimes. So there's a learning there for me as well.
Yeah, Mark, I believe that, you know, in this the only word that comes from me, new age, this new age movement, that is sometimes driving people. It's what we say, a sword with two points. You have that expression.
Yeah, double-edged sword. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I've been there also, and it was quite important for me to just get out of this, to allow myself to experience a certain paradise feeling. But then there is a moment that you need to come back and to something like this. And Portugal is not a paradise at all. You know, it's burning everywhere, and politically it's a mess. And but wherever you choose to settle, it's really, I believe it's urgent to find a way to connect with the locals, with the land and the locals somehow. I'm not the best people doing this, because I know that I don't go. For example, if I go to the municipality of Palmela, which is the one that rules the region where I do my retreats, I don't feel I have a direct work with the community, the local community. And this is something that it's like, why, man? Maybe if I open there some classes to the people, you know, this is something I've been thinking about, because it's really fulfilling in these gatherings to work with people that also bring you a lot of inspiration, and and to start working with kids. I did that in my early years. I'm working with kids in the schools, with old people in the community. This was where I began my work, actually. And I want to go back there to really bring this work to the locals. In Açores, for example, when I do workshops here, it's with the local people. There are no dancers here. So I meet old women, and then they are all rolling in the ground and touching each other's and doing some qigong exercises and improvising. And it's mind-blowing for them. So in fact, people are really available anywhere to do a work that we think is exclusively from New Age atmosphere and whatever, but it's not. Actually, the work, this embodiment work we are developing, is much more accessible to everyone. It's maybe the way you approach it to people, but it's real accessible.
Yeah, it's all about the approach. Like
Sorry.
I was just saying, I saw in Ukraine, for example, because we were doing embodied work under the umbrella of trauma work, just everyone does it. It's not a big deal, because people have this motivation, they have this way in, you know, they understand that they need to work with stress and trauma and things given the situation. Like, you know, doctors, nurses, just regular people, nuns, you know, like I'm a friend of the nuns at Eve now. Like, this convent have adopted me. Every time I go there, they feed me pizza. And it's just because they had a reason. Like, I didn't seem too weird to them, and there was no problem. And I sometimes think we limit ourselves to this kind of more new age vibe when it isn't always necessary.
Yeah, I think this new age vibe is just a concept we did, you know. It's the willingness we have to tap into something truthful and human.
And it's also fun to roll around with the hippies. I like that too. I went through a stage of hating it. Now I embrace it. I like it. Okay, man, we need to wrap up.
Yeah, I'm not in that now, because I'm not in that now. But I realized that it's maybe periods, because I was so often that I got a bit tired of that, you know. And I love.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Love all this hippie atmosphere. Now how I'm enjoying a lot. I totally changed. I allow myself to change, you know. For example, I'm here with a great hangover of spending a whole weekend without sleeping and drinking until I fall, you know. And this is really not hippie at all.
Sounds like fun. I'm glad you're enjoying the Azores, Pedro. Pedro, where do people find you online? Like you're not that easy to look at. Like some of your videos are on YouTube, on Facebook. Like, what's the best place for people to look you up?
Honestly, it's when I publish my stuff. It's like I'm preparing now my regular PDF about the Arrábidas that we are launching in a couple of days, and I think maybe I have some videos in my Facebook page, some stuff.
And you're on Instagram as well.
Yeah, I'm not a self-promoter.
Pedro Paz _ movement Dutch.
I don't promote.
You're not. I want to promote you though.
You want to promote me? I'll be thankful.
I want to share your stuff, like I feel like more people should know about you, this is the problem. It's difficult to get like non-American guests on this podcast because American guests will put themselves forward, and good for them, not criticizing them. Maybe British ones, maybe Israeli ones. And then the rest of the world, there's all these like hidden gems like you. Just as good, if not better, than most of the young American teachers. And I'm like, come on, people need to be able to find you.
No, you just said, no, I know I'm not really not a good promoter. I do my work, and maybe because it's, you can't imagine how many people just came to me saying, I want to sell you, I want to promote you, I want to do this. And then it's hard for me to commit with that because I'm entertained with my life. I don't care.
Yeah, I get it. You know what?
And then people arrive to my retreats in my classes, and I'm happy with that. But this is very Portuguese.
You've got a life. You've got enough people. I put a lot of energy.
I have my family, my stuff. Mark, and I don't. I'm not. Maybe I don't have this ambition of becoming. And a lot of people say, Pedro, you could be a superstar in this. And people tell me there's so much people famous, and then your work, it's far beyond blah blah blah. And I remember once I came to one of my teachers, because there is something that for me was when it was also mind shifting about the work I was doing, is when my teachers were started attending my classes. Like Howard Sonnenklair, for example, which is a reference. You should make a podcast with Howard Sonnenklair. It's the first.
Yeah.
And he started attending to my classes, and also other teachers coming. And sometimes I have phone calls of veteran teachers, congrating my work and saying, Pedro, you're doing an amazing job in this and that, and I'm thankful. And once one of my teachers, I was telling her, do you recommend me a school? I would really love to go deep, in this. In all this about the body and embodiment and this, and she said, yes, there is in Switzerland one of the best, I forgot the name of the school, one of the best schools of embodiment. I said, thank you, I would love to go and study there. And she said, no, Pedro, I will propose you as a teacher there. But I'm searching for schools. No, Pedro, forget schools. You don't need schools. You need to keep practicing. You're a self-school. You practice, and you become your school. Stop with this idea that you have to learn with something. Just do it, and you learn with the people you face. You learn with the people that come.
Yep, learn through doing it that way. I have to say, I'm slightly jealous. I burnt way too much energy with marketing and promoting, and got caught in the trap of wanting to be a somebody and be known. And actually, it's really pretty toxic, is what I've learned. And I think the position you're in of having a following and doing your workshops and having a nice life from it and being able to travel and teach cool students, it's really ideal. It's really ideal. And I've had it beaten out of me like the last 2 years that want more exposure or more anything else, beaten out of me. So quite a life in the woods.
I admire so much the way you work, all your methodology, and say, my God, I have to learn with this guy. Look how he presents his work. Look how organized he is. Look the quality of the presentation of his stuff. I'm always like, and then you're telling me that.
No, that wasn't me. It wasn't me. Particularly my second book, everybody goes, it's so organized. And I say, that was Maud Rabin from France who organized it for me. But I should credit to Maud. Listen, I need to go. Unfortunately, I've got a less enjoyable meeting than this planned as ever. So Pedro, I adore you. You're gorgeous. Lovely to see you. I'm sure I'll see you again. I'm not sure if you're around next week. Are you back in Portugal or are you still there?
Friday, I'm back in Portugal with Hugo, and then we're preparing our Arrábida 21st edition, and which is going to be something amazing, and I'm super, super excited with it. And this is again,
well, I'll give you a shout then.
Yeah, it's when we're preparing our stuff, meeting the teachers, talking with them, like what we're going to do and this, that. So I feel excited with that. And yeah, this is my life. And I'm going back home soon.
Enjoy. A total pleasure to talk to you. Nice to see you, sir. Real pleasure. Obrigado.
Obrigado, you too. Huh?